Everybody join in this melody. That's the only way we're gonna be free. Everybody singing this sweet refrain. Sing this melody till it gets in your brain. Well, I'm talking to you, Muslim, Christian, and Hebrew. Anything to do, we got to unite, or else we are through. Everybody singing this sweet refrain. Sing this melody till it gets in your brain. Everybody singing this melody. That's the only way we're gonna be free. They're united in Ghana, Guinea, Mali, and Nigeria. All over Africa, the people are getting together. They're even uniting in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Angola. And Rumors Vision will light the world over from Cape to Cairo, one Africa. Everybody singing this sweet refrain. Sing this melody till it gets in your brain. Come on, do it tonight. Brothers and sisters, let us unite. There is a need for unity. The best for you and me. There is a need for unity. The best for you and me. Unity. Everybody joining this melody. That's the only way we're gonna be free. Let us unite, let us unite. Come on, do it tonight. Let us unite, let us unite. Brothers and sisters, let us unite. Well, they're uniting in Cuba, Trinidad, Tobago, and Grenada, St. Kitts, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica. Let us unite in America, the yellow man moving in Asia, the red man awakening in India, the black man rising up in Africa. Let us jump up in America. Ah! Ah! There is a need for unity. The best for you and me. All of the nations of the earth as we speak are angry. They're angry because governments cannot suffice the needs of their people. They're angry because a few have gotten wealthy at the expense of the many. And the poor and the sick and the weak and the unlearned multiply. And the value of their lives are diminished by the rich and the powerful, so that when human life is devalued, that in the eyes of man you are unworthy of the gift of life, then it is easy for another human being to take the life of another human being that he or she has devalued. Black life in America is devalued. Hispanic life is devalued. Even poor white life is devalue. There's a way that I have to behave. I'm free, but I'm not free to rob you of yours. I'm not free to take from you what does not belong to me. So if I will construct my life according to these righteous principles, then between man and man, man and woman, peace. Between race and race, peace. Between rich and poor, peace. We have our beautiful Mexican family. This once was theirs. So you can't say to them they are aliens. That's a horrible word to use for former owners. I see my indigenous family here. Many tribes, but they're really one great nation of people that now must be reunited with themselves. So it's their time now, as well as ours, that God would intervene in our affairs and bring the bottom rail to the top. The government is not rehabilitating soldiers. When they send you away to kill. When you come home, they gotta reconstitute you for civilian life again. Make sure you have a job so you can take care of your family, but they're not doing it. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, a woman can do anything that a man does, and the only thing he forbids the woman to do is the thing that degrades her. So how high can you go? High as you want to. Why would God allow the female to wear his attributes if you can't be a manifestation of that attribute? Women, you got to be set free. What God has put within you must be cultivated, must be developed, and must be used for the advancement of a nation and a world. I said to myself, Mr. President, why the hell don't you go to the wicked police department? Why the hell don't you stand up and tell them that your killing of black youth and brown youth is not gonna hold no more? Why don't you stand up? God's word is in need of a truth that will set up a government where everybody can live in peace under real freedom, real justice, and real equality.
The strongest force in the human personality is the need to remain consistent with how we define ourselves. I'm going to say that again. The strongest force in the human personality is the need to remain consistent with how we define ourselves. What does that mean? We live in a world of so much uncertainty now because change happens how often? Constantly. Men's roles, women's roles, jobs, environments, businesses, bam, 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 it's all changing. So we have a need as human beings for certainty. We're not certain about relationships, businesses, time. We're not certain about a lot, but one thing at least we're certain about is I know who I am. If you don't know that, you freak out. You have what's called an identity crisis. We can't make any decisions. You're freaking out. So we all define ourselves subconsciously. So some people see themselves as being extraordinarily conservative. Are they going to do something crazy? They're going to know, hey, I'm not that kind of person. What kind of person? I don't know, but I'm not that kind of person. Isn't that true? If you think you're outrageous, you move differently, you talk differently, you do things differently. There's no one right or wrong, but most of us have trapped ourselves in an old identity. We've never updated who we are today. And so you go learn something, a skill, a talent, or ability, but your identity is, this is who I am, and so you never far surpass it. I'll give you a metaphor, and this will make more sense. If in this room we set the thermostat at 78 degrees, and the temperature drops, let's say 78 degrees is a metaphor for your comfort zone, not your goals, your comfort zone, which is known as your identity. Okay, people have goals that are more than their identity. That's why they don't usually get their goals unless they expand their identity. So 78 degrees is how your body weight, not your goal, but the one you're comfortable with that you live regularly. 70 degrees is how much intimate emotion you have in your personal relationship. 70 degrees is how much money you need to make to feel comfortable, not your ultimate goal, but your comfort zone. 70 degrees is the kind of relationship you need to have with God. That's at 78 degrees. And let's say the temperature drops to 72. What happens? This thermostat in your brain goes, hey, I am a 78 degree or not 72. And what happens? Heaters kick on. The heaters kick on to give you some kind of drive to change it, to make it better, to do something. How many of you ever experienced the part of your life, your body, your finances, somewhere where it dropped and it wasn't good enough and you felt drive to change it? How many have had that experience? Say, I. Now, if it's 72 degrees and you're supposed to be at 78, you try to change it and it doesn't work, and try something else doesn't work, try something else doesn't work. After a while, nobody wants to have disappointment and pain. So what some people do is they lower the thermostat. They go, I'm not a 78 degree, I'm a 72 degree. Those 78 degreers are full of themselves. I'm downsizing and being smarter. Next thing you know, they're at 68, then they're at 54. By the way, when they get to 54, who do they surround themselves with? 78 degree people? Who do they surround themselves with? 50 degree people, so they can feel good about themselves on a regular basis. Isn't it true? Now, you people are not like that. You're all overachievers. So if you drop down to 72 degrees, you don't settle. You try something, doesn't work, you do something else, break through, get a seminar, learn something, get a cut, whatever it takes, I do it. And by the way, do you stop when you get back to 78 degrees, people? Yes or no? No, you get to 80, 85, 90, 95, 98, 99 degrees, and all of a sudden your brain goes, what are you doing? Who do you think you are? You're not a 99 degree. What are you doing up here? What the heck are you doing? And as soon as you realize you're outside your comfort zone, your brain clicks on, and guess what happens? The heaters stop and you lose your drive. And now instead of selling, you're shopping, right? Now all of a sudden you're in a position where if that's not enough, the air conditioners kick on and you begin to sabotage yourself to get you back to where you think you deserve to be. How many of you, I know none of you have done this, but how many have seen other people sabotage themselves? How many have seen other people do this kind of stuff? I thought so, right? How many of you ever sabotage yourself? Say I. If you don't raise your hand, you lie about other things too, don't you? Come on. How many of you have been in a relationship and it's going really well and then you like say something, you go, why do they say that? You know what's going to screw it up? How many of you have ever done this? Say I. So sabotage is because you're outside your comfort zone, you're beyond your identity. So the reason I tell you this is today, to get the most out of this day, one, change your state, because the fastest way to change your identity is to do things you don't normally do. And your brain will go, I don't do this. I just did it. It felt good. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I'm more. Does that make sense? What gives you the edge? It's understanding why people do what they do. Because you understand why you can have powerful, positive influence. It says everything human beings do, they do for one of two reasons. We know what they are: to avoid what? Or to gain what? Now, as overly simplistic as that is, everything we do to avoid pain or gain pleasure, it's not quite true. Here's what I mean by that. We avoid what we associate pain to. We don't avoid real pain. We avoid what we associate pleasure to, because we're not dogs. As human beings, can we decide to make something that's painful actually pleasurable? Is that possible? Yes or no? Can a hunger striker go on a strike and feel the physical pain of hunger and convert that into ecstatic feelings because they believe they're doing something that's morally right? Yes or no? So we have the power to change what things mean to us and therefore what we feel in our body about them. We are not just like dogs. You know, a Nelson Mandela can be locked up for almost 27 years, right? And be in a position where it wasn't painful. When I met him the first time, I said, how did you survive that? And he looked at me with this really indignant look, like, how dare you even use such a word? And I looked at him and he said, I didn't survive that. He said, I prepared. I thought, whoa. He said, I knew one of two things would happen. Either I would die and it would spark a revolution of change, or I would live and I have to be prepared to lead. And to be a real leader, I need to be prepared for that. I mean, can you imagine a man coming out and don't want to kill everybody? If someone took a quarter of a century of your life, you might be just a smidge upset, wouldn't you? But instead, he comes out and says, you know what? You guys that put me in jail, lead with me. That's what human beings are capable of. But that means taking control of what equals pain and what equals pleasure. Most of us, though, live like dogs. We let other people train us what equals pains or pleasure so we fit into their world. We must take control of that process. And leadership, management, salesmanship is all influence, which is changing what people link pain and pleasure to. As long as someone links pain to something, they want to avoid it. If they link pleasure to it, they're going to go for it. Let's take an example. Would all the ladies in the room, would all the women in the room please raise their hands so we can see the women in the room? Wow, keep your hands up. We might even have slightly more women than men in this room. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, great. So we have about 4,200 people here. So let's take it as 2,100. Out of 2,100 women, I'd like to do a survey. How many women in this room are wearing makeup this morning? Raise your hand if you're wearing makeup. Wow. Should be a makeup salesman in this room, right? Okay. All right. How many are not wearing makeup? That'll be an easier thing to measure. Okay. Keep your hands up. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50. So halfway is 50. So let's say there's even 100. Out of 2,100 women, max, there's 100 not wearing makeup. 2,000 wearing makeup, only 100 not. Now, why is that? Is it because women love the process of putting on the makeup? How many wake up in the morning? Oh, I love to do this. How many do it for that reason? Okay, a couple women on drugs. There's usually a few, okay. How many do not like to put on makeup, but you like the result, i.e. you associate pleasure to, if I wear makeup, you know, I feel more attractive, or other people more attracted to me. How many do it for pleasure reasons? Say I. How many women in this room sometimes wake up and think, how come men don't have to do this? But how many of you put it on anyway because you think if I don't put on my makeup, someone's going to say, what happened to your face? How many do it to avoid pain, ladies out there, to avoid pain? How many do it for both these reasons? Let's see your hands. Now, how many men in the room are wearing makeup? How many men in the room wearing makeup? One man. Thank you, sir, very much. Why aren't men wearing makeup? It's because men are so naturally beautiful. Yeah, and I'm beautiful, babe. No, I don't think so, bud. It's because we associate something different for a man wearing makeup than a woman, that's all. And for a man, it will usually equal pain in this culture. Okay? Whereas for a woman, it equals pleasure. Everything we do, jot this down anywhere you want in your notes, just write down this. What I link pain to and what I link pleasure to shapes my destiny. What I link pain to and what I link pleasure to shapes my destiny. What I link pain to, what I link pleasure to shapes my destiny. Now, what does this mean? Well, lots of things shape our destiny, and I don't know what your spiritual beliefs are. I certainly believe in God, and I believe that there are choices that are there, but I think God gives you choices. And I believe your decisions are what shape your destiny. How many believe that you make choices and they shape your destiny? Say aye. Now, if that's true, and I don't know that it is, but if that's true, if your decisions shape your destiny, what shapes your decisions? And the answer is whenever you're going to do something, see, thinking, man, this is going to be pleasurable. It's not hard to figure out. Decision-making shapes your destiny, but what shapes your decision-making what you link pain and into pleasure. Some people do drugs. Some people drink alcohol. Some people achieve to overcome that pain. Some people eat as ways to get out of pain into pleasure is shaping your destiny right now. See, I'm here to tell you that Mother Teresa, God rest her soul, and Donald Trump are driven by the same force. You say, Robbins, you sounded somewhat intelligent up until now. You're trying to tell me those two people, they were both alive, that they were both driven by the same force? That's insane. Donald Trump clearly is driven by economics, and she's driven by changing the world. True, but they're driven by what they've learned to link pain and pleasure to. See, Donald has learned to link pleasure to being number one, building the best building, building a brand, having money, et cetera, and being number two is equal to death. That'll give you some motivation. Right? Mother Teresa is equally driven. I had the privilege of meeting her before she passed on. I don't know if you remember, but she at one time had a heart attack when she was down in San Diego, California, and I lived there. And I flew in the night afterwards, and I know one of the top heart surgeons in the country, and I went to go see her to see if she was going to get that kind of care. And when I went to see her, she was already out of the hospital. In the middle of the night, the nuns had taken her out without the doctors knowing. Can you imagine being the hospital that lost Mother Teresa? And she left a note that basically said, I'm busy. Not exactly, but she said, listen, thank you so much. Don't worry about me. I'm okay now. I can't sit in this hospital bed. People need me. And so she said, I'm going across the border to Tijuana in Mexico. And if you want to help me, don't send me flowers. Send me a mobile medical unit, which is like a giant ambulance with special stuff so she can get out to people that don't get health services. So I read about the thing in the paper. It was on the news that night. And Scripps Hospital was talking about, well, we're going to have a board meeting to talk about this. And 4 days later, still nothing had happened. So I called a friend of mine, Martin Sheen, the actor. And I said, Martin, I know you love Mother Teresa, and he's a friend of mine. I said, how about you and I go in together? Let's buy this mobile medical unit, and let's not call a press conference. Let's not do it for any reason. Let's just deliver it to her. If we're lucky, we'll meet her, and if we don't, we'll have done a good thing. So Martin agreed. We went and negotiated. We bought the thing. We drove it ourselves, crossed the border, went down there, and we meet Mother Teresa. Now, remember I told you state is what influences people so much? I mean, this woman, her state of love was so much you felt permeated by it. Plus, you changed state because she's about that tall. Like, how you doing, Mother Teresa? How are you? Got this picture of she and I waving like this, So I'm talking to her, and I'm a believer in the idea of modeling. Modeling is the concept that success leaves clues. That if someone is successful again and again and again, they are not lucky. They're doing something right. And if you sow the same seeds, you'll reap the same what? Rewards. Doesn't matter your gender, your age, your color, your background, your history. None of that matters. If you sow, you're going to reap if you sow the right seeds. So I've spent most of my life modeling. This seminar comes from modeling the best influencers that I know and putting it into a package that we can all use. So I thought, man, Mother Teresa, she's a saint. I'm with a saint. I could model a saint. So I said, Mother Teresa, mind if I ask you a few questions? She said, no, that'll be fine, Tony. I said, I'd like to know what gives you ecstasy in life? What gives you absolute, total ecstasy? And then the second time I said ecstasy, I went ecstasy and none. Ooh, right? I went like, well, what like juices you? And I went, juices you? And she started, I thought she was choking to death. I was about to give her mouth to mouth. And then I thought maybe I should wait. And I realized she was laughing. She had this cackle laugh. She said, you can use the word ecstasy with me. I said, really? I said, all right, well, what gives you ecstasy? I'll never forget. She paused. She looked at me. She said, Tony, what gives me ecstasy is to see a person die with a smile on their face. And I thought, whoa, not number one on my list. But in that moment, can you see why she went to 76 countries the last year of her life when her heart was terrible? See, she wasn't always this way. The time she was 50 years old, she was a school teacher. She was a nun, but she taught the richest kids in India. She wasn't helping people that were dying. She had an experience that changed her life, changed what meant pain and pleasure. A man was dying. She was in the city of joy, as it's called. It's not a beautiful place. And this man was dying. He saw she was dying. He tripped into her and fell in her arms, and she couldn't drop him. He came, sister, please help me, please help me. She wanted someone else to do it, but she couldn't. So she took him to the hospital, tried to drop him off. He said, please, they won't help me. Please stay with me. And he begged her, and after a while, she realized that they didn't help him because he was, in that country, a lower caste. Took him to another hospital. By the third hospital, nobody helped him. So she took him home, and he died in her arms. Heavy. Boom. In one moment, she changed what equals pain and what equals pleasure. It used to be being around a dying person was ultimate pain. Now, not helping a dying person was the greatest pain of her life. She tried to leave the feeling. She got in a train and went away from the city, but you can't leave what's inside you. So she promised God that as long as she lived, no one within the range of her influence would ever die again without dignity and love. Did she keep her word? Because it became her standard, my friends, not her desire. And she lived it.
Could you please pick the odd one out? It's not difficult, right? Now, I mean, the image you see on the screen represents something, a rough idea of what the British and general filmmaking industry looks like. You see figures revealed by the Women's Media Center in New York showed that across a 5-year period ending in the year 2012, of the 500 top grossing movies, only 2 of those had Black women directors attached to them. That's 0.4%. And I'm thinking back now to the night before I was about to set foot on the set of my first movie ever to direct. And I can tell you now, I was absolutely terrified. And my fear pivoted around the fact that I knew that I wasn't what was expected of a director. I didn't fit the industry model, full stop. And I wondered how I was going to lead my all-male crew, and they were also all white, how I was going to instill confidence in them and get them to believe in me so that I could end up with the film that I'd written on screen. After all, I knew that they had never worked under anyone that looked like me before, you know, my shape, my flavor. And I realized essentially that society had created the very world that I wanted to work in as one that statistically did not include me. And that society, by its own boundaries and perceptions, had created me to be somebody that didn't fit into the category of what filmmakers were generally expected to be. And yet I felt like a director. And I knew that I could craft stories on screen and connect those stories to audiences. But the figures, they don't lie. And the statistics, they did not tally in my favor. Essentially, my definition of me didn't match the definition that society had bestowed upon me. And so who wins? And that's what I want to talk to you about today. The question of who defines you, society or yourself. Now, is society's opinion of who you are, who you can be, what value you have, what you can achieve in life, is that more powerful an opinion, an important opinion than your own? If you say you're a writer and you have something valuable to contribute to the literary world, but, reviewers and critics, they say, you're not a great writer, then whose truth wins? And whose truth is most likely to determine your future as a writer? Well, for me, the answer is really simple. It's whichever you choose to believe. And I have this idea that since we can all dream a far bigger dream for ourselves than society could ever indicate for any of us, what would happen if we all decided that we were going to actively define ourselves and allow that definition to govern everything over and above anything that society could define or indicate for any of us? How would that influence our lives? Now, the question of who defines us comes up in everybody's life at some point or another. And it doesn't have to be about race or gender necessarily. For me, the question embedded itself long ago. I grew up down the road from here at a time when Brixton was being so negatively defined by society, and also defined in a way that it didn't authentically see itself, that it practically imploded on itself in its struggle to be heard. And with an older brother at the time who was still a teenager, I experienced how it felt for some like they were living in a police state. But yet I also witnessed how Brixton refused to be marginalized and criminalized as it rose up during the riots of the 1980s and rejected this definition of the existence it should have by society's standards. Now, defining yourself outside of the realms of society, it's not easy. And as a writer and director, it's such an interesting and fascinating subject to me that it's risen to the fore of every single project I've ever worked on and probably every single project I'll ever do. And I think the reason is because it's so complex. And I think what's so hard about it is to recognize when your choices and your direction in life are being influenced by society's perhaps more restricted ideas of who you should be. When the mirror image of what society is suggesting to you doesn't reflect the person that you really feel you are, or even worse, when the untrue image that's coming back to you does feel real. Because the messages and the influence can be so subtle that it's just easy to dismiss. This is just the way things are supposed to be. That's what you tell yourself. And you think about how many used that argument when it came to the transatlantic slave trade, or against the women who demanded the vote, or even today when it comes to gay marriage. And think how many institutions, I can think of them right now, and organizations use outdated, antiquated, biased rules to maintain the status quo. And sometimes an unjust status quo. We've been doing this for X amount of years, X and X amount of years, and so we can't change it now. It's just, it's tradition. It's a word they like to use, tradition. And, for me, I think that it sounds unevolved to not move forward because you think something is tradition. And yet when society is acting to prevent you from reaching your goals and your dreams, I think that's precisely the time you have to truly remember who you are. And the reason why I believe that is because today, none of us emerge from just one single world. We're all a combination of many worlds put together. And sometimes when you are at the junction of many worlds, society considers you a contradiction. You know, growing up, as I say, down the road from here, I experienced the common story of constantly being asked, where are you from? Where are you from? And I'd say, well, actually, I was born here in London. And then I'd be harangued. No, but where are you really from? You know, like what part of London don't you get? And then interestingly, I would go back to Ghana to visit both my grandmothers with my mother during summer vacation. And I would be told, well, you're not really Ghanaian, are you? Because you're too English. And it got to the point where at this junction that I was sitting at, I didn't know which pathway to go down. Because if I took one pathway, it would be rejected. If I took another pathway, that would be rejected. And it felt like, in many ways, society was defining me as an outsider. And as I say again, and I'll keep saying it, you know, this doesn't have to be solely about race or gender. We're all at the junction of many worlds. It can be concerning race, it can be concerning class, sexuality, so many different things today. And I don't think, well, I'm wondering at least if there's a person in this room who at least at some point in their life hasn't been identified outside of the realms of that which they have felt that they would see themselves, or at some point at least hasn't felt like an outsider. And for me, I don't think it should be about having to pick one pathway over another. I shouldn't have to pick being, you know, British over being Ghanaian or being Ghanaian over being British, because ultimately I'm a product of both. Both of those cultures reside inside me. And, you know, it shouldn't really matter if that's not normal to society. For me, it's not so much about a collision of worlds as it is a combining of worlds. And as I say, it shouldn't matter. It really shouldn't matter whether society defines it as normal or not, because as the late Dr. Maya Angelou would say, if we're always trying so hard to be normal, how can we ever know how amazing we can be? Now, you know, bringing to bear your definition of yourself in society, as I say, I know it can be hard. There are all sorts of things, beauty ideals, gender expectations for both men and women, you know, racial profiling, class prejudice. These are all examples of how we can be thrown off base in terms of knowing and understanding and defining who we know we truly are. You know, I'm thinking now about the guy who wants to stand in his truth when it comes to his sexuality, even though his community or his religion might expect something different of him. Those who find that, you know, they define themselves as beautiful, but society is telling them that they're not. And I think to myself that at those points, exactly, when society is telling you you're not who you feel you are, that's the time, as I say, that you have to understand the power of what it means to define yourself, how it can mean the difference between whether you may be happy or less happy in life, a failure or a success in life, but most importantly, conscious or unconscious in the story of your own life. I think back now to finding my way originally in the business of film and being told so often, you know, it's very hard to sell Black movies with a Black protagonist. And, you know, there are enough movies today that have defied that definition and shown that to be untrue. But regardless of whether that was just opinion or whether that was perception or whether it was truth or not, I realized that if I was going to move forward in the business, I was going to have to try and find a way of working out what the obstacles were and finding a way to negotiate those obstacles. And what I learned is that when you truly embrace who you are and all of the worlds that you come from, when you bring those sensibilities to a previously closed off world, you move society forward. Because when we move into other worlds, we touch people, we impact people. And when people change, then society has to as well. And for me, the value of embracing all of the worlds that exist in you, and get this, is that those of us who are able to do that have an insight that show us why colliding worlds on the outside are not a bad thing. Because when worlds meet, progress can follow. You know, the mother who may run the Fortune 500 company, the son of a cleaner who becomes a doctor, or think about the children, the first African-American children to set foot in the all-white schools after segregation was abolished. Those are all people that inspire me to do what I do. And I'm thinking now about the women who do make their way in the male-dominated world of filmmaking. And what we realize about those women is that when they're able to break into that world, they make an impact. The British Film Institute released figures between 2010 and 2012 that show that although women were still underrepresented when it came to independent filmmaking, they represented a significant figure or percentage when it came to successful films. People love their films. And that's what I mean when I say when we have the courage to move forward into other worlds, we have the impact to change them. And it takes me back to the story that I started with, stepping onto the set of my first film. And a few weeks before I was about to shoot that movie, a film executive came up to me and said, "Wow, you're not going to step on set with your big high heels on, are you?" As if to say, you know, me coming on set with high heels was really going to be the thing that established me as a woman in a man's world. And for the record, I don't direct in high heels, and I didn't direct my first film in high heels, except for On the Last Day. I always make that a tradition. But I did celebrate my love for heels in this way. And I don't know how clear that is for everybody, but it's essentially a high heel on the name of my company. And that appeared at the end of the movie and was the logo for my company. You see, I believe in leaning in to our identity, not leaning back. And high heels are definitely a part of my identity. But you see, I believe that the part of me that loves high heels and loves being a woman is every bit the part of me that is able to write movies, direct movies, and deliver movies. Just as in the way that the part of me where Africa meets Europe is the thing that gives me my unique yet universal eye. You see, I believe every industry, every business, every society requires fresh eyes, you know, to open new windows on old concepts and unseen worlds, to bring new perspectives to the universal experience. Now, the journey for me of defining myself is an ongoing experience. I work at it every day. But if you ask me the question today, who are you, Amma? Where are you from? I can tell you this. I'm a Black British woman. I am proudly born of Ghanaian parents, and I'm a screenwriter and a movie director. Now, how will you define you? Thank you.
No unity, no power. White power for white people. Black power for black people. 1967. The Black Panther Party. The movement. Freedom.
Let's talk about freedom, freedom, freedom.
We will not.